Councilmember Light.
Here.
Councilmember Bessie. Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Montgomery.
Here.
Councilmember Burke. Councilmember Adams. Councilmember McIntosh. And Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Joines, members of the City Council. Today, we're here, as we usually do, with a preliminary balanced budget, or trial balanced budget, as we call it. The good news is the base budget is balanced. Mr. Rao is going to, in a moment, get up and go over that. There are, though, several things that we want to talk about, the potential enhancements, and that the possibility is that of those being added to the budget before we recommend a budget in early May. What we'll do, we're not asking council to make a decision today. We're just looking for general discussion, questions, comments, and then over the next 6 weeks or so, I'll try to gather what the collective will is of the council. But at this point, I just want to turn it over to Mr. Rao.
Mr. Rao.
Thank you, Mayor Joines, members of the City Council. As the manager mentioned, we're going to talk about the trial balance budget in two parts, the base budget and then about some potential enhancements. At your places, you have a copy of this afternoon's presentation as well as a supplemental package of information that gives more details about some of the information that I'm going to discuss in the presentation. So first, just wanted to recap what we were seeing back in January when we presented an early budget forecast for 16-17 to the Mayor and City Council. At that time, we were showing a gap of about $400,000. Now, that particular forecast did include a number of pay scenarios, the 2% public safety supplements that we were recommending, a 2% that went into effect in February, and then an additional 2% that would be incorporated in the 16-17 budget, and then also a 1% market adjustment for non-public safety employees. So the early forecast was showing a $400,000 gap with those pay scenarios included. Our trial balance budget for 16-17, what we're showing here is a balanced budget with $192 million in expenditures, ongoing revenues of $187.6 million, and then a use of fund balance of $4.4 million. This budget is balanced. It maintains our current level of services, and there's no tax increase as part of this balancing. And this base budget does include the added cost of new facilities that we know will either come online fully for next year or for part of the year that are related to our bond projects. So to kind of talk a little bit more about the assumptions underlying the base budget, the next slide shows the recent history of our property tax base and what we're projecting for next year. For next year, we're looking at $20.6 billion in property tax base. That includes both real property, personal property, registered motor vehicles, and public service companies. That represents, at $20.6 billion, represents about 1% growth over what we're estimating for 2016. We rely on estimates from the Forsyth County Tax Office when we build our property tax revenue estimate. This is based on their March estimate. We anticipate an April estimate and a May estimate, and when we receive that last estimate in May, that'll probably be the base estimate that we'll use going forward. At that time, they'll have more information about business personal property that will have been filed by April 15th, and so we'll have what we feel like is a more firm number to build our revenue estimate on. Just a couple of brief comments too. In 14-15, we did see a reduction in our base as a result of the exclusion of custom software that was approved by state law. That was about a $300 to $400 million impact on our tax base. And then for the upcoming fiscal year, there's also the state law that went into effect that excludes builders' inventory, undeveloped land. The tax office is still working through that estimate, so we're not sure exactly what that impact will be. I think an early number that we were given was maybe $18 million in base, so it may not be a significant impact to the tax base. In terms of our local option sales tax, and this is the sales tax revenues that we budget just for the general fund. Part of our total sales tax does go to the debt service fund, but we're projecting $32.8 million in sales tax for the general fund in 16-17. That's about a 4.5% growth over what we're estimating for 2016. I think a few factors at play there. Number one, I do think that we're seeing the effects of the economy improving, so our taxable sales are trending up. We also know that through recent state legislation that they've expanded the base, so certain other activities, for example, entertainment tickets, those types of purchases are now taxable, so the base has expanded. And then in our case, our distribution percentage is projected to increase. The percentage that comes to the county that then is distributed among the local governments within Forsyth County, our distribution is projected to increase by almost 0.5%, and that's due to the fact that in this fiscal year, 15-16, we did increase the tax rate 2.5 cents to help us pay for the bonds. So that does have an impact, a positive impact in terms of our distribution of sales tax revenues. So just to do a little bit more of a drill down on the assumptions, here first on the revenue side, we talked about the property tax revenue estimate and our sales tax receipts. We're also seeing a significant increase in our sales tax on utility franchise taxes. That mainly is for electricity services. That is now actually taxed at the general tax rate, and local governments in North Carolina receive a portion of that. And through our first 3 quarters of this fiscal year, we're seeing significant growth in that, almost $2.8 million. Then we're also projecting growth in our ABC allocation, our beer and wine tax revenues. In the case of the ABC allocation, we get a portion of the net income that the local ABC board realizes. That is projected to go up because some of the debt that they've incurred over the years to build new stores, that debt's being paid off. So their net income is increasing. So we're projecting to realize some additional revenue there. And then on the revenue side, we are reflecting the impact of consolidating our Winston-Salem Police Department Forensic Services Unit with the Forsyth County Sheriff Office's Crime Lab. That would be 5 positions that we would add to the budget to serve the areas outside of the city as part of the consolidation. The county's share of that cost would be $344,000. So that $344,000 would offset that cost for those added positions. So those are the revenue highlights. In terms of the expenditure side of the base budget, right now we have included a 2% merit increase, which is based on performance. It's based on our tiered system where we have employees who can be evaluated as solid performers, strong performers, or top performers. We're also seeing another decrease in our salary base. That's just our cost of our existing salaries going down due to retirements and attrition. This is a trend we've seen over the last few years where we're just seeing the impacts of those retirements and those positions being filled at a lower rate. So that has really at least partially offset the increase for merit. We also include in the base the 2% annual supplement for sworn police and certified firefighters, and the increase in the minimums that were approved by the mayor and the city council in February, as well as an additional 2% supplement that would be effective January 1st of 2017. So that's about a $2.4 million impact there. We have a number of positions, new positions, that we've also included in the base, most of them related to the bond projects and the consolidation of our forensic services units. You see the 5 forensic services technician positions, and then the equipment maintenance technician, electrician, trades helper, and then if you see towards those last 2 bullets, the pool crew coordinator and pool crew specialists and the custodians. Those positions are all related to new facilities that will come online at some point in time during fiscal year 16-17, our bond projects, our police district facilities, a number of our recreation facilities, the spray grounds, those types of facilities. So acknowledging the fact that there will be more square footage to maintain, more cost there. And then finally, there in the middle, the addition of 2 crew leaders and 4 maintenance workers for enhanced litter pickup and right-of-way maintenance. We have already implemented these crews. This really just makes this permanent. We tried it on a pilot basis, found a lot of success in terms of response to areas that had some high litter issues where we needed to get out there and address those concerns quickly. So we're proposing that we would make those 2 crews permanent. It's about $918,000 for all of those positions. Then, in terms of our fuel costs, as we all know, we've seen the price of fuel trending down. We are recognizing that decrease in price. You can see there what we budgeted for the current fiscal year for unleaded and diesel. So we're budgeting the price at a significantly lower amount from almost an $800,000 savings. So that's built into the base budget as well. Moving on to the next slide and some other expenditure assumptions. There, the operating impact, the non-personnel operating impact of new facilities that would be going online at some point during next fiscal year, and you can see those there: police district offices, the Lowry Street fire station renovations, our recreation facilities. So about $439,000 there. That's basically utilities costs, some maintenance costs that we know that we'll have to be prepared to provide for. And then about $218,000 in increased expenditures for maintenance and repair for our vehicles. We have been trying to be more aggressive in recent years with replacing vehicles that have met the replacement criteria, either based on age or mileage. But we do still have a number of pieces of rolling stock that need to be replaced, and we are seeing some of the impacts of that creeping into the budget with higher maintenance costs, and so we acknowledge that and have built in about $218,000 more for those expenses. And then finally, support to other funds, what we transfer to other funds for other needs. And what we've included in the base there is an increase in the subsidy to the convention center of $300,000. The upper level of the convention center will be offline during fiscal year 16-17. Of the 2 levels, that one generates most of the revenue. And so we knew going into this project that it wasn't the first year we're in right now, but it was going to be the second year that we were going to see the most significant impact from the building being offline, at least partially offline. So about $300,000 of an increase in the subsidy. Then finally, some transfer to our grants fund for to provide local matches for some transportation planning grants, and the increase in our transfer to the Economic Development Project Fund, $457,000 there. That's mainly due to projected increases in incentive payments or scheduled really increases in incentive payments to the Wake Forest Innovation Quarter, Caterpillar, and Herbalife. So there is tax base that really kind of goes along with that, where we're seeing that has been realized in the tax base. And then increased transfers to the Capital Projects Fund for major maintenance needs, and then an increase in the transfer to the Information Systems Capital Fund to provide some additional funding for our city fiber network to enable us to be able to complete that project. Any questions about those assumptions?
Thus far? Councilmember Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Rao. On the question about the gasoline, I guess, well, even the one before that, the one where you have the forensic services technician 5 to hire. Will we advertise for these positions, or are they already in place and we're just moving people that may apply for the job?
Well, the forensic services technicians, we are already moving to fill those because it needs to happen by July 1st for that unit, that consolidated unit, to be in operation for the full fiscal year. To meet a state requirement that we have an accredited crime lab. As far as the positions related to the bond projects, those we're not advertising. Those we'll start the process of filling those positions once the budget is approved by the mayor and council. So that probably they'll be in effect in July 1st. And then the crew leaders and the maintenance workers related to our enhanced litter pickup, we have double slotted existing positions so that we could pilot test these 2 teams, these 2 crews, to be able to provide that enhanced response. So this would simply make those positions, add those 6 positions and make these crews permanent.
Well, I guess, again, my question was about the 5 technicians. You're saying either we have them already working the job, or we got to hire 5 more people, right? That's correct?
Well, we will have to hire 5 more
Okay.
people. Yes, ma'am.
On the next one for the equipment maintenance technicians, I have no doubt that they're doing a great job. But you said that they were brought on or were moved around, slotted to adjust to demand in certain areas when there's, I'd like to see the areas that you're talking about that these crews have enhanced over the past, what, year? Is that how long they've been in place or longer than that?
Probably about 8 months.
I'd like to see the data that shows that we need them. And I'm not saying your staff, but I just need to see it.
Yes, ma'am. And those will be the crew leaders and the maintenance workers.
Correct.
The ones above that would be new positions.
Correct. I also have a concern, and maybe I'm the only one, about the decreased fuel expenditures, because I hear on the news and everybody now, in which we all know, the fuel costs are going back up. So if that happens, because, you know, the companies start to pull down, take lines offline for repair, the big oil companies here in America, is this a real number that you think we can stick with, or you think there may be some fluctuation based on what we're seeing right now? The trend is that the price is on its way up.
When we look at the data coming from the Energy Information Administration from the federal government and what their projections are, and of course we continually look at those, and we'll continually look at them here over the next several weeks too, and if we feel like we need to tweak it, we certainly can do that. But right now, I mean, the prices that we're using, I think, are below even what what they may be projecting. So we feel like we've got a little bit of cushion there. We're not trying to take advantage of all the potential savings from that. So, but we will continue to look at it over the next several weeks.
Thank you.
Councilman Burke?
Yes.
No, go ahead, you go.
Thank you. Mayor and members of the sitting here, I would like to ask a question of follow-up from the councilwoman. I want to see the job description of the crew leaders. And also, I want to know where have they been picking up the litter and how successful and who's monitoring the crew leaders. And then we can show you, once you give us that, I think we can better understand what their job is all about and if they're being effective in the job.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Clark?
Just real quick, I would appreciate some information, and I don't sit on the public safety, so y'all may have already seen this, on the forensic services consolidation, what the city and the county are currently paying separately, and then what the consolidated budget will look like for 2016-17.
We can provide that. I will share with you. We're bringing an action forward here in April to do that. The number the county has provided right now, they pay about $438,000 for their 5 positions. Those are sworn positions. And a consolidated unit, they would be staffed with non-sworn, so it would be about a $94,000 savings decrease in that cost, which is a savings to a city taxpayer who is also a county taxpayer.
Mr. Rao and I were just talking, that item, we still got some things to work out. It might not make it here till May to the Public Safety Committee.
Well, I guess one question I'm going to ask when I see it is the county getting all the benefit of the synergy, or are we getting some? But anyway, next question on the fuel. I believe, am I correct in saying we do not pay the tax on the gas?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes,
So
sir.
that's why, and somebody help me, what's the tax on gas, 30 cents or so? 40 cents?
55 cents.
55.
Federal and
Good
state.
gracious. So that's why when it says 175, I think gas is about 195 now, 199. So you take off the 55, it's about 140 right now. So anyway. And then lastly, I'd just be curious how the incremental change in the budget for the bond project is versus what we thought it was going to be. And I guess you could throw in there the police stations too, substations. I knew we were going to add some people. This is about what we thought was kind of what the question was. Okay. And that's all for now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, go ahead, Mr. Rao.
So the next slide is a projection of our fund balance, the fund balance we project to have going into fiscal year 16-17. So there, the June 30th, 2016 estimate shows a reserved amount of $26.6 million, which is based on our new 14% fund balance policy. Then we show the appropriated amount of $4.4 million, which I'll go into a little more detail here in just a minute. So based on an overall fund balance of $51.1 million, that would leave an undesignated fund balance of $1.6 million, and that would be undesignated, available for any purpose, whether it be matching funds for grants, economic development projects, one-time needs, snow events. You'll see there, looking at both of those years, that we're not projecting any growth in the overall fund balance, and that's mainly due to the fact that we have appropriated during this fiscal year monies for that first round of public safety supplement pay, and then also under our new financial policy, distributing half of the increase to the 14-15 fund balance between the Economic Development Project Fund and the Housing Finance Assistance Fund. So here again, this is it's still a fairly early estimate. I mean, we're just now finishing the third quarter of the year. My hope is that we'll still be adding some fund balance to our 15-16 amount by year end. But right now, to be conservative, we're showing no overall growth, and so that undesignated piece now is about what we're projecting would be about $1.6 million. So in terms of looking at the fund balance and how we're proposing to use that $4.4 million, $2 million of that is for operations. That's more reflective of the fact that we try to be still conservative and we estimate our revenues, and conservative in estimating our expenses. We really don't intend to use $2 million to cover ongoing costs. $600,000 for the fiber network project, our city fiber network project, to connect our city facilities to provide improved communications and connectivity. Then the $693,000, which represents the total increase in the subsidy. I know in that earlier slide you saw a $300,000 increase to the subsidy. This would be the part of the subsidy that we're actually trying to cover with one-time money. This is a one-time use of fund balance to get us through these 2 years that we're under construction. Our expectation is that once the convention center is back fully online in 17-18, that subsidy will go down, and it'll go down hopefully past where it was pre-construction because of the increased activity in that center. The next piece there, $940,000, is one-time appropriation to address some major maintenance needs in our recreation and parks facilities. And to get to see more of the specifics of that, the supplemental package that we've provided at your places on page 3 provides the specific locations for where we would make these various improvements. And then finally, $210,000 for what we call public safety and general government facility renewal. Here again, major maintenance. And mainly that money will go towards a kitchen renovation expansion at Fire Station number 5, which is located at 771 Palmer Lane. So that accounts for the total $4.4 million in proposed use of fund balance for the 16-17 budget.
Yes, Councilman Burke.
About the improvements we're talking about, and looking at these improvements, do you feel that we have done enough in looking at these parks we have? When you look at the money that we spent, could it have been less had we been doing more of a regular basis and checking them?
Mayor Pro Tem Burke, I think that's certainly a possibility that some of this may be reflective of some deferred maintenance. Yes, ma'am.
I agree, Mr. City Manager. I would say that, and I've said it many times, in order to save money, if we keep things up, we don't have to spend as much. And I think we need to do a better job in monitoring our facilities, whether it's the parks or recreation facilities or the buildings that we use. Thank you.
Councilman Adams.
Yes, Mr. Rao, recreation facility renewal, what is that?
Recreation facility renewal, that's a term that we have used with regard to addressing major maintenance needs with our facilities. So, for example, when a roof needs to be replaced or a mechanical system, an HVAC unit needs to be replaced, it's something that the dollar amount is probably larger than you can really work into an ongoing operating budget. Oftentimes we do try to address this through our 2/3 bond financings, but it's something we really try to address, by identifying some kind of one-time funding source.
Can we get, and you usually do this for us, can we get more of a detail the next round when this comes to us? What centers we're talking about, softball fields, shelters, where they're located at?
Yes, ma'am.
Some of us like to ride around during the daytime.
Sure.
So I'd appreciate that, a little bit more detail when you come back like you normally do on the
Yes.
next round.
Yes, ma'am. And page 3 of that supplemental package does include the actual locations where these maintenance needs would be addressed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Burke, you got another question?
Yeah, concerning the, looking at the parks and recreation, the appearance. For instance, when I ride down Carver School Road and I called Mrs. Driver and I made her aware of this, the grounds look terrible. Where you play the tennis is not appealing or attractive. And then you go down New Walkertown Road and you look at the park sitting there at New Walkertown and Waterworks. It looks terrible. And I think when we're putting taxpayers' dollars in facilities and we're trying to attract people to use all facilities, then the appearance of them makes a difference. It may be like that in other parts too. So what do we do to make sure the grounds look attractive?
Let me answer that. Councilman Brooke, we are working on a project of both appearance and utilization pilot project we're going to bring to committee early this summer. We've got 4 or 5 rec centers in the pilot project. Carl Russell is one of those where we are not only looking at the landscaping plans to improve the outside of it, but also looking at what needs to be done on the inside of the centers, what needs to be done as far as programming. So we're going to bring kind of a comprehensive plan for the first 5 centers to committee early summer.
Mayor, members of the council, I would say that at Waterworks and New Walkertown, that comprehensive recreational area we have, it has a lot of nice things, but if it's going down, you're not going to attract the people to want to, and it's for across.
Yes, ma'am.
And then when you ride toward Winston Lake Estate, it used to look much better, but those grounds look better from the entrance. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Okay.
We'll talk about some potential.
Yes, sir. So that concluded our overview of the base budget.
Everything we've seen so far is included in the base budget with no tax increase.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So the next couple of slides do go over some potential budget enhancements. Needs have been identified through our process up to this point and discussions that we've had. So we've got them in certain categories. So the first category I'd like to talk about is employee pay and benefits enhancements. The first item here is a market pay adjustment for all employees except sworn police and certified fire personnel, a 2% market pay adjustment there, and an increase in the pay plan minimums of 2%. In your supplemental information on page 8, there's a chart there that provides some updated information on our market pay comparisons. And just to point out a couple of pieces of information there. If you look at the police officer and firefighter positions, the supplements that we've already put into place, that has helped us to move closer to market for a police officer, just a 2.3% differential, and I think prior to that it was 6%? More like 6%. And then firefighter, it's actually on par with the triad market. So we feel like we're making progress there, but you can see there with some other positions, light equipment operator, maintenance worker, IS analyst, that we're still behind the triad market and behind when we look at cities in North Carolina with a population of 100,000 or more. So I just want to provide that information again as a basis for this potential enhancement of a 2% market pay adjustment for non-sworn, non-certified fire city employees.
Mr. Bessie had a question on this one.
Yes, for city employees beyond the public safety positions that have been already identified as badly below market, have we, instead of saying what it would cost to add an extra percent across the board, looked at what it would cost to bring those categories that are severely behind market up to market?
We haven't, you may, I have not.
I'd like to see information along that line. Naturally, we want to give everybody as as good a raise as we can justify, but I think we've neglected actually focusing on the specific problem areas because we've been afraid to move away from the just give everybody the same raise. It starts to get controversial there, but that actually is the problem, isn't it? That we've got some categories that are just way below budget, way below market rate.
I think it's both, Councilor Bessie. We just, Mr. Rao and I and Ms. Cruz just had a meeting with the executive search firm that's helping us look for budget director, and they told us this is the third search they've done for us for executive positions where they're having a challenge recruiting people because of our salaries. So I think it's at all different ranges. That one of the challenges of going in and trying to move maintenance workers, if you see maintenance workers and light equipment operators, which are severely behind the market, as you said, is it's more than just it's very difficult. If we moved maintenance workers 32% or even 20%, they're going to be ahead of the people who supervise them. And so it's difficult to do it surgically, completely surgically. You can do it somewhat surgically, but it's difficult to do it all the way. Otherwise, you'll have a mutiny among folks that have already been here and are supervising others.
Yeah, I hear that, and you have to take that kind of reality into account. But at the same time, I think we've been dodging the core issue when we don't consider market pay adjustments that are actual market pay adjustments, targeted in addition to whatever we do across the board for employees, targeted at the most severely underpaid categories, taking into account things like that. You can't.
And one thing I would suggest, and we did this several years ago, and it's pretty common in jurisdictions, is what's called a one-third study. So over a 3-year period, you take 1/3 of your employee classifications and you look at what their market rate should be. First of all, you make sure they're doing the right job for their classification, and then you move those 1/3 of positions. We did that 06, 07, 08, I think, and those were surgical moves where lots of people moved a lot more than across the board.
Thank you.
Councilman Burke?
I was going to say, Councilman Bessie is correct in the observation he's making. And even though you say that some of the people may make more than their supervisors, well, there are some jobs where some people have been promoted and they're making, well, let's say the supervisor have been there, but when these people, they're making more than they are making. And I think that's something you have to face, because I can imagine, and I don't really want to imagine this, but we've given salary increase to some of the employees. The morale, how I feel, I think that's something that we're going to have to consider, and it's just a fact.
Councilman Adams?
Yes, I think we've had pretty lengthy discussions over the past few months about the salaries disparity, and again, I want to thank Mr. Rao, the city manager, and Ms. Carew for, again, going forward with helping all of us to understand how this came to be. Again, you just can't, as Ms. Garrity said, use a scalpel and it'll go away. I think to Councilmember Bessie and Councilmember Burke's comments that we said last year that we would be moving forward with the corrective action as we move to do this. We did what we could, as they say, with the emergency responders. But now we just have to look at, as a collective group and body, the real data and the real issue as to how, just like in business, how we close the gap. We would, maybe not even in our lifetime here, we may not see this remedied, but it is, our responsibility to at least come up with a prevention and corrective action as to so it never gets like this again. I know we'll be talking about the 401k match next, but we're already behind on everybody on that. So, we're trying to make up ground, as Mr. Garrity said, for the people we're trying to hire strategic. All of the jobs are important here in the city, but we are already somehow in a precarious situation with trying to find the best candidates for jobs based on our history of salary compensation. Again, I think we need to go back and look at Ms. Carew, Mr. Garrity, Mr. Rao, as I've said before. We need to look at other ways to attract jobs, people coming here. And it may be compensations outside of salary. Again, it might be a car. It might be a car compensation. It might be when we see increased revenue like we had this past year, not saying we will again, but if we do, we need to start. I know we want to put it in housing and economic development and the general fund, but again, corporations, when they see revenue increases, they always figure out a way how to do some income revenue sharing with the people that make it happen every day. Again, I think we have got to get to a point where we just don't rely on salary-based compensation. It's got to be other forms of compensation. But again, just like we stated, we need a corrective and preventive action to close the gap on the double digits, just like we've done in the past. Those are the ones we have to look at. And we got to look at it in comparison as to, as you said before, the supervisors and managers. But to Ms. Burke's point, if you've been giving them raises all the time, big raises, then again, we got to get a plan, a real substantive plan to close the gap. Thank you.
Mr. Clark, and then Councilman Light.
I would just be sure we're doing apples to apples here, that our numbers, don't include overtime, zeros don't include overtime or whatever. Because I do know in salary comparisons, it's awfully hard unless it's almost an identical city. But I do agree that, one problem you have, if you got a bunch of, I'll just take a lot of equipment operators, if they make more than their supervisor, no one will ever want to be promoted to be the supervisor. So then you got a problem there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, as Mr. Garrity mentioned, the one-third method that used in 07, say?
Yeah, I think so.
That's a good way to kind of go in and look at on a strategic basis and adjust the whole lines to address significant issues. Councilman Light?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One thing that's missing here that's leading me to confusion. We don't, do we have one light equipment operator or 100? If we are going to look at how we come up with the money, that would be a good number to have. Same way with financial analysts, do we have 5 or 15 or whatever? So that would be helpful.
Okay. Councilmember McIntosh?
One thing that I've spoken about in the past, and Councilmember Montgomery and I have spoken about recently, is trying to come up with maybe even a non-monetary way to reward city employees potentially using housing as a draw. We have a lot of vacant housing. If we can find a way to help some of our employees become homeowners, and by that way increasing their wealth, and also making it more feasible for some of our folks to live inside the city, when right now I think they get priced out of living inside the city. So some combination of that, if we can figure out a way to make that work, that would be a win-win.
Did we ever, somebody can correct me, did we ever have to incentivize fire and police to live in housing, different interests at one time? Did we ever do anything like that?
The police.
Police.
A long time ago we did. Yeah.
And we did it here in the city, didn't you? What did we do?
We did. I can't remember exactly, but it was an incentive to live in certain areas.
Yeah, so Mr. Page is shaking his head, so go back and review it a little bit so we can see what, yes.
Yes, Councilman Burke. It's called the Good Neighbors Program. That's a federally funded program through HUD that we promoted for probably 5 to 7 years, probably 10 years ago. But you're exactly right.
Let's see if we used it. Did they take advantage of that opportunity? That would help us. They did.
Okay. Mr. Brown, go ahead. Next item.
The next potential enhancement for employee pay and benefits is to increase the minimum hourly pay rate from $10.10 per hour to $10.40. And then finally, the addition of a 2% 401k contribution that would be effective January 1st, 2017. And on page 9 of your supplemental package, you can see how we compare to other large cities and counties in the state. And as of right now, High Point and Winston-Salem are the only cities that do not provide any kind of contribution to employee 401k. So under this enhancement, this would be a contribution. It would not be a match. So all employees would be enrolled in a 401k plan to receive, in order to receive the 2% contribution. We proposed that the effective date would be January 1st so that we could go through our open enrollment process, educate employees who may not have a 401k about the plan, about selecting investment options for the money. So $558,000 would be the 6-month cost of implementing that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I see the 2%. Do we have there is no max, right? I mean, can they put in as much as they want? I mean, personally for me, but can they? Because 2%, if I'm saving for retirement and, maybe I'm 20, 30, 40, maybe I might want to do a hard hit, 6%, fixed income, whatever, in the counts. Can they do more than 2%? Because you're not putting in anything, so you would think that they could.
Yeah.
And I would think it'd be up to the tax, law maximum.
Right now they can do that. We offer the 401k. Employees can participate, put their money in. We just don't put any city money in. Right
I know.
now.
I know.
Yeah.
The matrix says that, but what I'm saying is none of the others are matching. But what I'm saying, he says 2%. So you're telling me they can't put in more than 2%. There's no requirement that they just have to stay with 2%.
Yes,
correct?
That's correct.
All right.
That's correct.
Councilmember Montgomery and then Councilmember White.
Yep, stepping back on the minimum hourly pay component, what I would like to see is also the number that I brought up earlier in the year, and that is a number in terms of what's the cost at $15 an hour in terms of the bare at the minimum wage number for us as a city. I know from here, $10.40, again, we're moving in the right direction, $10.40, 40 hours a week, $21,632 in terms of what that would be in the annual salary. $15 is $31,200. So I just want us to see what that actually pays, what that salary is. And so I would like to, we can get that higher number, because that was a conversation request earlier, so I'd like to see that.
We'll make that calculation.
Okay. Councilmember White.
What is 457?
Another form.
457 is another retirement plan. I think it's more specific to public employees.
Yeah.
I believe they can even access the money a little bit earlier than they can for a 401k. Okay. The next category of enhancements relates to the fire department. The first item there is the addition of a fire inspector position. Chief Mayo has briefed the Public Safety Committee about a proposal to move to the state schedule and to also move fire inspections back into the Fire Prevention Bureau and move that out of the fire suppression area so that the personnel in that area can focus truly more on responding to calls and training. So this would be the first position of a plan to move those inspections into the Fire Prevention Bureau. The next item would be the addition of 3 additional shift safety and training officers. The current year budget includes 3. The original request was for 6. So this would be completing that request is to provide a safety and training officer on each shift. Those officers would not only provide training to the fire personnel in the department, but then also serve as safety, provide safety oversight during incidents to ensure that the fire department is complying with OSHA and best practices when it comes to responding to fire incidents. So this would allow them to provide the coverage that they feel like they need for training of fire personnel, but also for that safety monitoring during incident response.
Councilmember Adams.
Thank you. Again, you can't put a price on safety. We all know that. I think in light of some of the issues we've seen over the past few years with OSHA and compliance and training and documentation and audits, I think, again, we're moving in the right direction with this. I would tell people if you don't want any more headaches, you might want to do this. Also, this morning, if any of you read the editorial page of the Winston-Salem Journal, see, people that don't work, we can do that. Anyway,
I'll read it tonight.
they had the article, the editorial was about the fire turnout gear and safety gear of the county and how they're moving towards more compliance as well because they have the volunteer agencies, and over the years they have not, to some degree, kept up with the demands of what's required now to provide not only safe equipment and safe practices for the firefighters, but also ensuring the safety of their citizens. So if you haven't seen it, you might want to go online and read it. I just think this is a great thing. I believe, you always got to have the training documents and things in place for your employees because that's a requirement now from all facets of government and customer service. So I think this is a good positions here to do.
Ben, on the chart, it shows we only have one of these employee training positions, but we approved 3 last year. Am I correct?
Yes, in fire we have 3.
So shouldn't that be at least 3 or 4?
Or 4. I can do that in my head.
It's cheap.
Well,
What's that?
So we have 3, we run a 3 platoon system, so there's 1 per platoon. So at any given time, there's only 1 working.
so we're saying Charlotte has 9 positions working each platoon?
Mayor, that's the general city training area.
Okay, we're on the wrong one.
This is not fire related. This is for.
Okay.
So that's actually the next enhancement.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Oh, excuse me, Councilor Montgomery has a question.
Yeah, and on around the shift safety and training officers, are there specific certifications and others that these personnel will need that's different? The reason I'm asking that question is there an opportunity for us to have individual who provide safety training and training for firefighters that also provide training for other areas within the city, whether it's police department or other areas? Are these people that have to be trained so specifically that they can't have cross-functionality within city government?
They could have some cross-functionality. They'll be certified as peer fitness trainers. They will have, I always have to remember because I wrote my notes. There is a certification. The manager of environmental safety and health is called MESH. Councilmember Adams, I'm sure, is familiar with it, but they will have that certification as well, which applies across a number of disciplines. The fire service falls under general industry with the Department of Labor and OSHA. Because we're in OSHA state, we fall under the Department of Labor. So anything that would, any other departments that would fall under that general industry category, our safety and training officers would be able to help them identify and address unsafe issues, those sorts of things. So the short answer to your question is yes, sir. Not everything, but some things, yes.
And the reason I bring it up is I would find it, and I would ask if there are ways in terms of looking at these roles, one, that they're not that they're inundated with more work that they can actually accomplish, but the fact that if there are areas that we know for a fact within city government that we don't have training, we have not done training for a period of time for the fact of budget restrictions, that we will look at opportunities that these people could have some opportunity to engage more than just the fire department and some of the training opportunities. I think that we get a better bang for dollars if that was something we looked at, if that's an opportunity.
Good. Councilor McIntosh.
This is for Chief. I know at some level, when your service level goes down, your homeowner's insurance, your fire insurance goes up. As we spend some of this money, are we approaching a point where our citizens are going to see any decrease in their insurance costs? So we're paying it up front, but it should diffuse out through the populace, no? Or does that only work one way, the insurance company?
You're asking me a question that's difficult to answer. I will tell you this, when I was in graduate school, I did a benefit cost analysis of, at the time I was working for the Raleigh Fire Department, of what it would cost versus the benefit of, at that time, Raleigh moving from an ISO 3 to an ISO 2. And I was able to show that there probably would be a 3 to 10% reduction in property insurance premiums by moving from 3 to 2. I'll also tell you that since that time, insurance companies have begun to use actual loss data in how they assign premiums. So I would feel most comfortable telling you that I think so. I do know that for us to move from a 2 to a 1, the most points that we have to make up are with additional personnel and with additional training. Those are the two big categories where points are to be had.
And so we're currently at 2.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
The final enhancement there for fire department is the addition of an apparatus mechanic position, a mechanic that would maintain the aerials and the trucks. $44,000 cost there. Page 5 of the supplemental package shows that right now we have half the staff compared to other large cities in the state. If you look at Greensboro has 5, Durham has 4, Raleigh has 6, High Point has 4.
One more.
Councilman Adams?
Yes, and Mr. Rao, you might want to mention that this position, it's not like you can just go get a mechanic and say, come in and work on the fire trucks. Again, it goes back to we have compliance, certifications, and everything that these mechanics have to be trained in to be able to work on those fire trucks, because a fire truck is a different type of animal versus just a truck, because it saves lives and it does what it does.
Yes, ma'am. And this particular position would assist in maintaining the repairs. Although we're on a regular schedule trying to maintain our fire apparatus, we know that we are still in need of maintaining and repairing what we have. And in addition to that, it would enable us to maintain our preventive maintenance schedules with our equipment. The next enhancement is related to employee development. It would be the addition of a human resources training position and also resources for additional in-house training programs. So this is general training citywide that we're providing funds for. This does not include additional funds for attending conferences or other out-of-state type training. This is all to build up our in-house capacity there. And when we in the appendix there on page 10, you can see how we compare to the other large cities in the state as well. We have one dedicated training position compared to 7 in Greensboro and 4 in Durham and 4 in Raleigh. This position and these additional resources would allow us to continue our succession planning program we call Career Builder, also to implement some personal security training that we feel like we need to put in place in light of our overall effort to improve security in our city buildings, and also to enhance our supervisory training.
Councilman Adams? I was calling you automatically.
Yeah, because I got a question. The amount of money, the $108 for the training, and in the synopsis it talks about how we spend a lot of money with outside contractors to do the training for us. Will we save money? As Councilmember Clark would say, is this a apples to apples, or are we getting ready to increase some budget expenditure here?
I believe this is an increase, but I'll look to...
It's an increase. We'd actually be providing some training in-house, increasing training in-house, probably also contracting a little bit less, but not much.
Thank you. Could we see that also in a breakdown of how much, now that we're starting to ramp up on the training and development, how much money the contractors, the consultants cost, how much was our cost for our employees to do it, and what it's going to look like maybe going forward with this?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Taylor?
Mr. Rao, how much are we budgeting for the human resources training position, and how much are we actually budgeting for the in-house training programs? I don't see the two differentiated here.
position is about 42 plus. Position is
About two-thirds for the position, once you got benefits in
So
the
it's
third.
$50,000 for the position and $58,000 for the training.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide. The next category would be enhancements related to our police department. First item there is the addition of a police captain position and 4 communications operator positions for the proposed 4th district. That would be serving the central part of the city, $310,000 in cost and salary and benefits for those positions. And the next item is the addition of 2 crime analyst positions. We currently have, I believe, 6 crime analysts in the department. This would increase the number to 8, which is more in line with how we benchmark with other cities that have between 8 and 9. These crime analysts would provide more data analytics, provide more beat-level type data that then supervisors can use in terms of deploying our personnel throughout the city. And then lastly, the last item there is the addition of 2 public safety information systems analyst positions. We have a police information technology division. They have obviously some specialized technology related to the body cameras, the in-car cameras, the databases that they maintain. These 2 analyst positions would support all of that, the desktops, the mobile data computers, and the pursuit vehicles, provide that additional support and also assist with their IT strategic planning. So $169,000 in costs for those 2 positions.
Yeah, I'm sure it's difficult to be precise with this kind of question, but in discussing the value of these positions for the police department, it would be useful to have some estimates on benefits. For example, reduced response time for an average call, or if you have X additional capacity in your crime analysis, what can you expect in terms of, on average, solutions or speed of response, speed of analysis for for crime information, and that for public discussion in terms of benefits.
Sure. Okay, and finally, some other enhancements. $500,000 to provide for additional equipment replacement. Typically, we finance our equipment replacements over 5 years, so that 1/5 payment, whatever debt falls off, we typically at least try to add back that for new replacements. For the base budget, we've got about $7.5 million in money for replacements, so about $1.5 million in debt payments. This would provide an additional $2.5 million of funding for replacing equipment. You can see there some of the categories there. Police pursuit vehicles. We still have a number of police pursuit vehicles that are at the mileage and age thresholds for replacement. A hazmat truck in the fire department. Equipment in the Department of Transportation, including maintaining our salt spreaders and our snow plows, our snow equipment. Property and facilities management vehicles there, and then sanitation vehicles. We still have a number of rear loading and side loading trucks that are in need of replacement. We have some of those built into the base budget, but this would just enable us to replace more. And then finally, the addition of an IS senior administrator position in the Department of Transportation for our new traffic signal system. In addition to the city fiber network, we've also installed a new traffic signal system. The state has done that. And because of that infrastructure, there is a need for a more professional administrator type position to maintain that. This position would cost $88,000. We anticipate that part of the cost, perhaps more than half the cost, would be offset by additional reimbursements from NCDOT. And this position would oversee both the city traffic signal system and the city's fiber network. So we wouldn't have to have a dedicated position for each. It would be one position overseeing both networks. So total enhancements come to almost $3.5 million. Right now, a penny on the tax rate yields about a little over $2 million. So these enhancements altogether would be equivalent to a 1.7 cent tax increase.
Any other questions, Mr. Rao or Mr. Garrity? Not looking for any decisions today, obviously. Just
No.
Laying out some possibilities.
And Mayor, usually, we still haven't gotten our final tax estimate, so hopefully, based on past years, we'll get a little more growth. So hopefully we can work some of this into the base before May.
Good. Mr. Bessie?
Yeah, this wasn't covered specifically in the briefing, so I held it to the end of that. But Public Works has been under what we thought was a continuing, conversation with the county and the airport authority regarding the stormwater fees and possibilities for offsets there. I'm hoping that we will still continue those conversations, looking at things such as offsets in terms of stormwater management activities at the airport, and offset potentially in terms of joint economic development work. That latter is something that has been used by another city or two in North Carolina. But given that there was this surprise announcement that there's potential for a request for de-annexation, I know that we have previously calculated the loss of revenues to the city from that. I'd like to ask for preparation of some information on the other side of the ledger, as it may affect our budget. The costs in terms of services that we're providing now, fire, police, emergency planning, other services that are provided to the airport that we would no longer be providing, or would be able to either shift resources that are currently dedicated to providing those services to the airport to other needs, or potentially be in a position where if the county wanted to contract with the city for continuing services that we would no longer be under obligation to provide, what would the value of that be? Hopefully, of course, this is all hypothetical, but we have to be prepared given the uncertainties of the situation.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Councilmember Bessie. It's a very valid point there, but I'm very hopeful that we can come together on a reasonable solution. I think some of the ones you suggested there, the economic development, kind of joint issues there, or interlocal sharing will be some ways we can work together. But we're good to be prepared. So Councilmember Burke and then Councilmember Clark.
Natural, I'm going to say something since you're talking about something sitting in the Northeast Ward. As I've said to Mr. Greg Turner, I appreciate him attending a meeting with the commissioners and listening to some of the conversation. I said to Mr. Turner that I know you've been doing some things in the public works, and I've also said to the city manager, it is important for the county commissioners to understand that we pay taxes. That's one thing. It's also important for us to have some communication concerning this matter. And I said to Mr. Turner the other day, I said, Mr. Turner, if by chance, if it's something that we can do that will show an economic impact, that we can work with the county, we feel as taxpayers we need to be doing this. But as the mayor, I feel that we need to have not just what we hear, bits and pieces, whether it's on the internet, and we need to have some kind of meeting with them. There needs to be a clear understanding. And I said this, that I wanted to be understood. Now, what the county may come up and do, I want them to understand clearly, as a taxpayer, I'm concerned about the safety of the area. When we have planes coming in, somebody's going to have a sincere interest about the people who just about live on that. And it can't be them and us. It must be a sensitivity. So, Mr. City Manager, if we could talk all day, and I think we need to, and Mayor, we need to be having some type of, as I told the councilwoman earlier, some type of.
I communicated today with Commissioner Plyler, and we'll sort of, that's a great suggestion, Councilmember Burke, moving forward. So, Councilmember Grimm, you had a comment on the airport as well, and I know other people wanted
Mine was not there.
Okay, let's deal with that, if that's all right.
It was just, and I think Councilman Bessie asked the right questions, and I was going to ask similar ones to Councilman Burke. and to the East Ward that butts right up against the airport and represent neighbors and others to the airport. I would think that as two local governments that live right next door to each other, that we can get to a place where we can figure this out. I do think that it is sometimes slap in the face to open up a newspaper and read certain things about things that are there and have not had those conversations, and understanding as elected officials the mutuality of respect that should exist. And if we hadn't had those conversations, I just think it's not proper etiquette, I would say, for some of the dialogue that has been there, and the absence of dialogue that exists there. And so, when, as I think Councilman Taylor says, often when two minds get together, they can come to some type of agreement. And I think that has not been given the proper chance to take place. And until that happens, I don't think we'll get to a resolution. But again, with Mayor, hope Commissioner Plyler and others can help lead us to a place that we can get to. But I can't go without saying that truly the absence of those conversations is just, it fouls in the face of political etiquette to just have a true conversation between two groups of local government. This should not be a conversation that has to be discussed at the state level. It's something that we can deal with right here as a community.
Very good. Councilman Clark, you want to talk about airport?
Just one other brief thing. I want to say I appreciate Commissioner Marshall reached out to consult on that, and I want to thank him publicly. And I much appreciated Chairman Plyler's comments in the paper noting that there were avenues other than sort of the either or, the total exemption versus the doing nothing. And that's what I thought we were in the process of looking at and hope that we will, in fact, discuss.
Thank you. Councilman Clark.
Just briefly, on your page on the fund balance, how about showing, you can do this when the budget gets to the estimate for the June 2017 balances in the general fund balance, because we're splitting things up and surpluses and all that. I wasn't sure how all that was going to take place.
Okay. Airport. Okay.
You did look
Councilman Clark, have been waiting long.
To everything that all the other council members have stated, it is true that last year, some of you may remember, this conversation came up and we had a somewhat of a sit-down upstairs in the, what is that room? Public Works Conference Room. We also talked about it when we went to Raleigh for Town Hall Day. We had some conversations with some of our representatives, the mayor and Councilmember Bessie and some of us. The thing is, again, we're at this point and we're 1 year to when this conversation started. I always think about how we could have helped to make this better if we had continued those conversations, and that was asked and requested, that we continue the conversation. To Councilmember Burke's point, we're at a place where there are some instances we can't do anything but go along with trying to find a positive win-win and resolution for the city of the Winston-Salem and the county as well. Again, I just think that protocol and respect of the process of government somehow has not tainted it, but it has a way of making you feel like, well, when you read what the outcome is going to be without anyone even talking to you about the potential outcome, it does have an issue for concern. I just hope going forward, council and mayor and staff, that we need to make sure that everything that we think we might want, which we might not get, but what we might still want, you need to be composing your Christmas wish list as to what does this agreement, much like our forensics center, what we are embarking on to make collaborative partnerships with other municipalities in the county. Think about everything that we would think that would make this a good agreement for not just the council, but the city of Winston-Salem and its citizens. If it be that we get some kind of rebate or offset or whatever you want to call it from the state or the federal government or whoever, we need to also be thinking about, as Ms. Burke said, the safety, the environmental concerns, the storm weather. And we need to hear from those citizens that live over there, and those businesses. So I just think we can make this work, but we need to make sure, as they say, we put everything on the table, see where it all shakes out, You know what, and making sure that we hear from the citizens of Winston-Salem, and more importantly, the citizens that live and have lived for many years near that airport.
Councilman Taylor, you've been very patient. Thank
Yes, as I always am. Mayor, members of the council, I'll try to be as brief as possible, but I want to bring up an issue that I believe affects most of our areas. In the colder months and more recently in the warmer months, a lot of our communities start to be the target of illegal dumping. There are people coming from other communities dumping furniture, mattresses, and things of that nature in some of our other communities. We do have low-resolution cameras and low-quality cameras that capture or attempt to capture some license plates, makes, and models of vehicles, but I think we could do a better job. So as we continue to prepare our budget, I know the cameras that we use are roughly $300, $400. There are some extremely high-resolution cameras that go all the way up to roughly $7,200 that could do wonders. So without bringing the point up here and talking about it for hours, it's important to us that all of our communities are safe, clean, and vibrant. In order to do that, sometimes we have to spend a little bit of money. A lot of things that we discussed, we know they must be discussed for the greater good of the city. But this issue is one that my constituents personally are reaching out to me saying we need some extra help on. So I'd ask that we consider looking at some higher resolution cameras, Mr. City Manager, and if we have to interject that into the budget proposal, I'll be happy to do that. Thank you.
All right, Ben, you want to talk about the Transit Authority Fund Reserve as a final slide?
Very, very briefly. We typically like to show the outlook for some of our major enterprise funds. This one in particular, the Transit Authority Fund, with the new routing that will go into effect next fiscal year. Just wanted to show what we're projecting in terms of the reserves. This includes $250,000 in added expense in 16-17, and then $500,000 in added expense in 17-18, all out related to the new route system. It also includes providing matches to federal grants that we plan to apply for bus replacements and other transit facilities like bus shelters. And so what we see here is a gradual decline, a gradual drawdown of those reserves. But we just wanted to share that with you, with the mayor and the council, so that you can see kind of how we're seeing the next several years. It's a trend that we had seen prior to fiscal year 11-12, made some adjustments, and then hopefully, like I said, this is a projection, and hopefully it will actually, the slope will be more shallow than that. So, and then just just lastly, just the calendar again. Right now, we're planning to submit the city manager's proposed budget to the mayor and council on May 26th. There will be a series of finance committee workshops, including the finance committee's public hearing on June 9th. A review of the public safety budgets by the Public Safety Committee on June 13th, and then consideration of the budget for adoption on Monday, June 20th.
Councilman Montgomery?
Yes, it was a question on the Transit Authority Fund. One thing that I'd be interested to see with that, and I'm not sure the impact that it has on that. I know at the bottom it has a dollar amount impact on the route change, but if we've been able to potentially gauge at this point any increase in ridership based upon those changes and what potential economic impact that would have. Have we been able to run any potential numbers on that yet, or we're just going to have to wait?
I'm not sure. We can look to see. I'm not aware of any economic impact, but we can certainly look at ridership projections.
Yeah. I don't think those numbers are in there, but I do believe within 18 months of rollout, you'll start to see increased ridership.
Okay.
I know this gets into a tricky area to predict too, but have we identified any anticipated impact on the federal assistance coming to the operation of our transit program from the change?
I think right now we're assuming no growth. So just to be conservative, we're assuming no growth in the 5307, the federal allocation in the out years. Usually there's an operating assistance piece and a capital piece, and that operating assistance piece has generally been pegged, and it hasn't really changed that much over the years. So beyond that, then you have capital maintenance, and just to be conservative, we've just assumed no growth in the federal federal funding.
Let's take a look at this. This may be an overly pessimistic projection.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And this is a request on information, and it may be something that could come along with the budget when it comes at that point, or maybe something that can be prior to. When it comes to our actual spending and contracting out, I know we've had some studies done, and we've had even some lists of those contractors. It'd be interesting for me to see in its totality for outside spending, those contractors and ownership breakdown, gender, all of that kind of breakdown for in terms of how the dollars are going to be spent outside of the salary dollars we're spending, actual contracted dollars that go outside with vendors from whatever they are, to be able to kind of see that broken down in some chart, just to see how our money's been spent, the impact here locally in terms of these are dollars that are staying here in the community outside of dollars that go out, and then the breakdown on the businesses. I don't know if we have that. Or
We do.
Okay.
So you want local, non-local, as well as minority and women? We do. We can get that to you.
Okay.
Based on the fact that that's a really ugly-looking chart for the transit.
It's look ugly.
Yeah, and the ugliest parts of it occurred before I was on council. Can I at some point get a little narrative about what occurred to make those, to cause that drop and the V-shape curve?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, we can do that.
We would all like that.
Councilman Clark?
Yeah, I could comment. I will say, Mr. McIntosh, for many years that I've sat here, it used to always show this huge drop, and it always got kind of delayed, and then finally we did have it, and we did reallocate more of the tax dollars. I think it's $0.015. Am I remembering correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Yes, sir.
Every now and then my memory's right. And then we see it shoot up. I'm more concerned why all of a sudden it's shooting back down, because you would think it's the same buses, roughly the same ridership. Gas is cheaper now.
As Mr. Rouse said, the new routing system where we added a route, its full implementation is about $500,000 more than the current system. So that's, if you take that out, it would be almost flat.
Despite the fact we were told the new system wouldn't cost any more, but that's all right. All right.
The initial proposal was.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Let's go ahead.
Motion second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
I'm picking on my Democratic buddies here.